Welcome back, everyone, to Constructive Uncoupling, the podcast devoted to amicable divorces. I'm Judy Weigel, your host, and amicable divorce expert. Why? Because that's all I do, amicable divorces. I'm a divorce mediator, and I also file for amicable divorces in Los Angeles. My company is Divorce Resource Incorporated. So we're continuing on our reading from the best book I've ever read on amicable divorces. It's called The Good Karma Divorce, and interestingly, it's written by a woman named Judge Michelle Lawrence. I mean, interestingly, because judges are not known to have a touchy-feely side. They have to work strictly within the law. But this woman, over a series of many years, really felt compassion for the people in front of her in the courtroom that had to go to trial. And she investigated from her point of view and watching the devastation of relationships play out in front of her. She wrote a book called The Good Karma Divorce. It's on Amazon. And so I want to read to you from sections of it, and I have been already, but this is now, I believe, the fifth chapter I'm reading from. It's called Carnival Mirrors, and it's on betrayal. So let's get started. When we find out our spouse is having an affair, we invariably believe that betrayal is a crime against the soul. It has a persistent quality that maims the spirit. Although other injuries may heal, this one cannot, as it has burrowed like an alien in our heart. There is no reparation to our memories, and this kind of scar can never be resurfaced. Our psyche had sustained damage beyond compensation. That's what she feels betrayal is like. From the moment you learn your spouse has been unfaithful, you lacerate yourself with questions. Shouldn't I have known? This is my life partner. Did I allow the betrayal through some failure or mistake? Does this new love somehow know or understand my spouse better than I do? Shouldn't I have known from the beginning that my beloved was capable of deception? As you spiral through the pain, you backtrack through every incident that told your gut something was amiss. Then you blame yourself for ignoring your instincts. And you know we all go through that. In your heart, you believed that the relationship had finally ripened to the point where you didn't have to be on guard. With trust, you thought you could relax. You did, and it was delicious. And now it feels as if your life has been stolen from you when you were asleep. You could have defended yourself had you only known. Now you know the truth. Betrayal is a secret battlefield you are unaware of until you're defeated. Trying to figure out what is and is not true as a result of your spouse's affair is like using carnival mirrors to get an accurate picture of yourself. You can no longer be sure when you were loved and when you were not, when your spouse was or wasn't where he or she was supposed to be, or what the tipping point was that left your spouse vulnerable to temptation. The past cannot be calculated or measured. You don't know when you were loved 95% of the time or when it dropped to 60%. To survive, we attempt to reconstruct an ordered and accurate pattern of facts about what really happened. Reeling and still in disbelief, we try to piece together a new reality. We want to establish a reality that is so accurate we can almost see it with our eyes. Then we can create our theory of the crime. And we all do that, don't we? In so doing, we embark on a circular and painful endeavor, as this information cannot be captured in time or space. It is as if, while walking in the dark in a familiar place, a place we know as well as the back of our hand, we stumble and fall down a staircase we didn't even know was there. We try to make sense of every dot on this canvas, hoping to reduce the pain, but the dots are in the millions, and the search takes all the energy we have. Maybe you can remember the day you fell in love, but it's almost impossible to pinpoint the day you fell out of it. In your desperate and frantic attempt to catalog emotional history, which defies measurement, you can drive yourself into a state of constant mental agitation. You may find one answer, and in an hour, that answer changes. And when your bearings are lost, the thing you cling to should not be a thought process that contains inaccurate facts arranged in a fractured picture. Once you begin recreating the crime scene, there are unlimited kaleidoscope realities, leaving you with blurred vision and optical illusions. As you come to realize the difficulty of recreating the past, you may crave the truth so strongly that you try and wrest it from your offending spouse. Beware of this blind alley. A spouse will lie or shade the truth for any of several reasons. If she still cares for you, she will try and spare you the pain of the secret courtship. If the betrayal was some sort of retaliation or was anger-based, he may make the story even worse than it really was in an effort to increase your pain. Why allow more power to be shifted to someone likely to offer answers that can only compound the ambiguity? I recommend an alternative approach. It's the only one I believe offers a chance to choose the lens through which you will perceive your circumstances. And I think she means in a much more realistic way, and in a way that'll calm you down more and give you back your power. So here's where I think she's going with this. And by the way, any of you who have listened to the former readings from this book, you know that I edit along the way, or I add my comments along the way, and I'm so sorry, but I have to do it. Back to the book. The elemental power accessible in the case of betrayal comes from your choice of attitude. We're giving power back to you now, she is. There is no power to be gained by becoming attached to an inaccurate and incomplete picture of a horrifying reality. Instead, there's a way to reframe the pain so that it transforms your present into a platform for growth. Now, let me just diverge for a second. When I send confirmation emails out to all of my clients, especially the ones for filing, the last sentence in that email is, divorce is a new beginning. And I put that there because it's an opportunity for a new beginning. First of all, I've been there, done that. And as devastating as it was to hear my former husband say, I want a divorce, I almost fainted when I heard it. I had to use it for growth. And it took me a year, literally a year of unbelievable sadness in order for me to really regain my power, my feeling of control. And I regained it by saying, I have no control really over the behavior of anybody else. The only person I have control over is me and how I handle the circumstance provided to me. And if I use it to learn and grow, which I did a lot of self-awareness. I took a lot of walks, and I just said, okay, you know what? I can turn anything around through forgiveness. That was my go-to thing, was forgiveness. I forgave myself, and I forgave my husband at the time. And I know I already did a chapter on forgiveness, but that's where it's at. So there was betrayal, there were affairs, and I looked at it as a symptom that we had bigger issues, and maybe one of the issues was we shouldn't be together. So anyway, let me go back to the book. I just wanted to share that with you. The demolition of your old reality has caused your optimism to become severely impoverished. But what are you really hungry for? In truth, it's not answers about the specifics of the betrayal. What you really need is a superfood that addresses accessing your own power. This superfood will allow you to detach from negative thought processes, unhook from your storyline about your devastation, and release the other person to his or her own fate. Because, by the way, they have a lot to work on. They really do. You may think they're sitting pretty in a new relationship. No. They have a lot to work through too, believe me. Back to the book. When you find out about the deception, you fall into truth. The truth is that your mate has unknowable, unpredictable, and mutable parts. In the beginning, we all think we know our partner. Betrayal tells us what we already knew deep down. Reality is not permanent, and for that reason, complete truth is unknowable. Yes, betrayal is the far end of the spectrum of this idea, but it is the perfect vehicle for exemplifying impermanence. You have now been forced to accept that impermanence is part of the life cycle of human existence. Permanency and loyalty are beautiful objectives, but their loss should not be a basis for our self-destruction. That would be like destroying ourselves over the laws of living. You cannot resist those laws any more than you can oppose the laws of gravity. When you resist change, more suffering happens. Again, when you resist change, more suffering happens. Spiritual leaders tell us to do our best when choosing our actions and not to be attached to the results. Betrayal proves, albeit in an undesirable way, the importance of that concept. The devastating knowledge of betrayal winds its way through every square inch of the relationship. Trust, security, love, meaning of life, and ego. Oh, ego in betrayal. Yes, ego. Isn't that the worst of all? Our ego is so fractured. In divorce, period, our ego is so fractured because we look at ourselves as not being loved. Well, if we're the ones being told it's going to be a divorce. But literally, our ego across the board is fractured in divorce. When you've been betrayed, it's hard to know what to do or how to feel. To cope with this, you might reach for the heavy artillery. In all likelihood, you will summon commando-grade anger to feel more powerful. That's what we need, more power. Hoping your anger will devour other more painful emotions. In this situation, anger is not only abundant, but primitive and righteous. Anger is the liquid that pours from a severed reality. The opportunity for handling anger is now at its highest peak and its most difficult. Then, fortified by concepts that underlie the good karma divorce, you do the unthinkable. You step out of the plane into thin air and you believe in the parachute. Your parachute is your ability to reframe the present. Accept the facts, but let the importance of your own process be the overriding factor. Accept that impermanence, randomness, hypocrisy, and betrayal are in the world. We are all vulnerable, but we are not doomed. I will say the word forgiveness now, and I will talk about it throughout in subsequent chapters. And we've already done a chapter on forgiveness, those of you listening. For now, suspend your disbelief. Forgiveness in this context means letting go, releasing the betrayer to his or her fate. You have not been asked to be the historian, the reconciler, the forensic pathologist, or the judge and jury of your marriage. Believe it or not, the facts don't matter much in the end. Your circumstances are not terminal. You are not ill-fated, and this is not too brutal to be borne. If my advice seems harsh or even inapplicable, please know that there is really no other choice except endless destructive thoughts engendered by your betrayal. You may have to work the chapter on forgiveness twice as hard. You have been devastated, and recovering requires the ultimate in devotion to the processes in this book. This kind of anger is recurring, slow healing, and clinging. Therefore, this pain, like an alarm clock, will remind you to work on your process. It won't let your practice fall through the cracks, and you will have a daily opportunity to exercise a new way to get out of pain. I refer you to Annie Dillard's book, The Maytrees. The husband, Toby Maytree, cheats on his wife. Lou with her best friend, Dreary. Oh, Toby Maytree cheats on his wife, Lou, with her best friend, Dreary. Sorry about that. Dreary and Toby then move in together. Oh God, this is horrible. For many years, Lou suffers as a result of the betrayal. One day, Lou considers a different approach. For 1 minute by her watch, she imagined liking Maytree impartially. For only 1 minute by her watch, she saw him for himself. That day, having let go 1 degree of arc only, for 1 minute, she sighed relief. Here was something she could do. Within a month, she figured that if she ceded that the world did not center on her, there was no injustice or betrayal. Jealousy and betrayal, how they affect your case. People often feel betrayed even when they don't want to be in the relationship anymore. Now, isn't that interesting? So let's just say you knew already this wasn't working for you, this marriage, and you were even thinking about how to tell your spouse you wanted out. But you find out that your spouse has already been out through an affair, betrayal, and you're still mad. Isn't that fascinating? Yes, because hurt is hurt is hurt. And whether you thought you wanted out of the marriage first or not, you got hurt first. And that's ego. We get back to ego. Okay, back to the book. Once you have adapted to separation, if your spouse connects with somebody new, you must adapt to yet another reality. You have worked so hard to find habitable the reality that your marriage just could not make it. Now you have to find consolation within a still harsher reality. Because of the third party's presence, the other person, you question whether your marriage was given a fair chance, even if you were already estranged in your own mind when the affair began. It's easier to accept that the marriage just did not work than to realize the deck may have been stacked against its survival. I've witnessed the disastrous results when one spouse gets involved with another person before the other spouse. This is often true whether or not the uncoupled spouse still wants the estranged spouse. When a third party comes along and an attachment begins, it becomes even more difficult for a dialogue to continue between the husband and wife. The unattached person feels unheard, left talking to him or herself with a former partner too preoccupied to listen or perhaps too influenced by the new love. So what Michelle Lawrence is saying is, it's hard enough going through your own experience of, oh gosh, I have to tell my spouse this marriage isn't working for me. But then in the middle of that, to find that your spouse is now with somebody else, and now we have a third voice in this triangle of a situation, and that third person has a voice, like it or not. So now you have to deal with not only your spouse and yourself, of course, but now this third person. So she's just saying it becomes complicated. I always discourage spouses from bringing their new love into court. Oh my gosh. This actually happens. Believe it or not, this actually happens. When they do, the case becomes nearly impossible to settle. I remember a case in which the wife regularly brought her new boyfriend to court, essentially pouring acid into the husband's open wounds. Because she seemed to be intentionally causing him pain, it was difficult for him to agree to her requests. Duh, what do you think? I don't understand what people think. Well, they don't in the middle of divorce. And I say bringing your new love into court, or, believe it or not, they brought them into a mediation. Is that you, the one who brought the third person into court or into the mediation? Is that you wanting to get back at your spouse? Because honestly, it doesn't work. Your spouse then is not in a position to want to negotiate with you. And if you think bringing that third person in provides power and support, bring an attorney. I mean, bring somebody in who factors into the negotiations and the legal process. Don't bring your new boyfriend or girlfriend. That literally makes no sense at all. The wife appeared to have a support system in the form of her new boyfriend, and the husband felt he did not have one. Makes sense? This increased his resentment and sense of isolation. Her boyfriend was a psychologist, and when she communicated with her husband, she used a new vocabulary. Every time she used the word boundaries, it seemed he lowered his offers for settlement. He knew they were not her words, and he was sure he was negotiating not only with his wife, but the shrink as well. That's Michelle's word, shrink. If your spouse becomes attached to a third party prior to the completion of the divorce process, in your imagination, he or she is off having wonderful sex with a new love, and when they are not having sex, they are laughing together, maybe at you. Perhaps you think your spouse has skipped out on the responsibility for the required amount of suffering time. Yes, we do feel that the other spouse is supposed to suffer as much as we are suffering. This is when it becomes seductive to use the courtroom process to erase the perceived smile from your spouse's face. Let's see if he or she can still laugh after an extended and combative divorce, a little voice in your head may be saying. I know from years in the courtroom that the most common way for the unattached spouse to penetrate a situation in which he or she no longer feels relevant is through verbal warfare. Words unleashed, perhaps via an attorney, that raise welts on the skin of the soul. Raw, red, and festering, this torrent of accusation is guaranteed to give the new lovers a bad time. It's exactly these kinds of sentiments that attach more to you than your offending spouse. The emotion here is so readily available that you may find it hard to resist. But the choice is clear. If you don't resist, you'll have scarred yourself far greater than the original offense. For those already in another relationship, you might want to remember you're already engaged in a courtroom process, perhaps in court all too often. It's not a good idea to commit an offense that when you are already so close to the gallows. Every situation is different, but more often than you can imagine, people who have affairs are on a journey that is theirs alone. They may have emotional business that has not been completed. The battle you were not invited to attend is the inner battle with their demons that you did not know about. The betrayal may have been activated by something other than you, and you were pulled into something of which you may have been ignorant. I offer no excuses for those who stray, but try to propose a method for understanding. Betrayal is not always personal. Many times the affair has nothing to do with you, who you are or are not. You may say, still, the vows say loyalty and monogamy. The concept of a vow is adherence to a problem. The vows are meant to be sacred, but a vow is really an aspiration, and your spouse's unilateral decision that the vows no longer apply is not a license for you to destroy your life with anger. The betrayal was only the crust of the pie. The life lessons in the marriage are the whole pie, and you will miss them if you focus only on the crust. So let me stop a minute and say, my background before I got into the divorce business was in live entertainment. And in Los Angeles, when people have weddings, they spend an enormous amount of money and they buy entertainment beyond anything you would believe. So when I would do music for weddings and I would listen to the vows in the wedding ceremony, I always thought they should be changed. The vows seemed very unrealistic from the get-go. Yes, the aspiration, and I love that Judge Michelle Lawrence used the word aspiration. It's what we aspire to total monogamy, no betrayal. I'll be there through thick and thin. But I kind of always thought that they should be changed to we will try our best. We will try our best. And sometimes we will fall. And hopefully you will be there to understand. Now that's a more realistic vow than the vows are, I will always, I will always, I will always pledge. Well, it doesn't work like that because we're flawed human beings. And we will fall down. Like for instance, I've had people come in here getting divorced because one spouse couldn't handle that the other spouse became seriously ill. To the point where the lives of both people changed. And the healthy spouse just wasn't suited for the role of caretaker. They just weren't suited. And it required that experience of going through unbelievable physical, medical challenges to know that about themselves. So marriage is a life experience that can either maintain until the death of one of the spouses or is a vehicle to show you about yourself. That's what it is. Back to the book. My friend Mary had numerous affairs during her 8-year marriage, which ended in 1995. She always spoke of them to me as if she was having the time of her life until recently when I asked her if she had any regrets then or now. She said she hadn't thought about it in a long time and then with full release told me. Whenever I did back then, I thought I was totally justified. You make up any story to yourself to justify what you're doing. I always thought of myself as the kind of person who would never do that. I couldn't even understand people who did have affairs. The guilt I feel now is about the moment when I crossed over to the dark side. I just didn't want to take responsibility for my life. I wanted to blame him for what I was going to do to get out of pain. And that is what I wanted, just to get out of pain. I feel guilty because I didn't have to go to the dark side. But I couldn't figure out another way. Looking back, I expected more of myself. After the first affair, it got easier in a way. But after a while, I was just out there. I wasn't really safe at home because I didn't want to be around my husband. I was afraid he would ask me questions and I would get caught. He became the enemy. So I started to resent him for making me feel guilty. You're now in a no man's land. You can't go home. There's no more comfort there as you have contaminated it with lies. And you're vulnerable out there. I was getting my fix, but it was eating me up alive. But after a while, you have to lie more and watch every lie to try and keep it consistent. I then had to start lying to my friends and the rest of my family. I was even thinking about my lies in my dreams. After a while, you start to believe your lies. The thing is, it always follows you. You think it will go away, but it doesn't. So I asked her what it was really like, what it was that really hurt her about being deceptive. And she said, it messes up what you believe about yourself, and no matter how long it takes, it works against you. You unconsciously do things that sabotage your life. It distorts your vision about what good things you should be entitled to. I always wanted the dream. I never saw myself as someone who would end up lying and cheating. Until you get real with yourself and come to terms about why you were the way you were, who you hurt, which is everyone, no holds barred. You continue to do unconscious penance. Your life decisions are distorted. This is hardly the picture of two blissful people. Deceivers must view everyone as dangerous and capable of taking away their family, social status, and credibility. Anyone who finds out can take away their power. As they start telling what they call white lies to everyone, distinctions of right and wrong get blurred. Also, lies travel in packs. Each one needs 5 others to support it. This requires energy and non-stop attention to detail. After talking to Marie, I realized that deceivers need tools for self-deception that lead to self-forgiveness and the forgiveness of the entire family. Which would you rather be? Someone who was deceived but has a firm path and remedies for recovery, or someone without any such tools? So this is really important, if I might diverge. Yes, who would you rather be? The deceiver or the one who was deceived? Now, it's tough on either side, but if you were the one who was deceived, it's a whole lot easier because you can gain back control by forgiving. The one who has deceived has a lot of self-reflection to go through and really has to get through that process to allow that person not to deceive again, or it will continue happening. Back to the book. If you read books that give you tools for tolerating suffering, you know that even with these tools, the path is hard. Imagine how hard it is for those who have no tools. If they have no methods for self-forgiveness or finding the value of apologies and no philosophy to set anchor in turbulent waters, they will stay in pain. And we still have to do, by the way, the topic of apologies. That's coming up next. What if escaping to a third person is all they can do? They may have no idea that there is anything else they can do with their pain. Betrayer's deception blocks them from attaining peace. This is true even though it may be invisible. We imagine that they don't suffer, but they are joyous, and that they are joyous and indulging every desire. And because they seem to do so without pain, we believe they've gotten away with it. But no matter how it looks to you, betrayers are the ones who are lost in confusion, may have guilt forever, and must carry the burden of lies. The real answer to minimizing the effects of betrayal is compassion. I'm not saying that you should feel bad for deceivers or that their struggle should eclipse your own pain, but there's another way to look at this. Those who spent all that energy on deception without the opportunity for healing are those who may be marked for life. I've always thought I would rather be the one who sometimes experienced unkind and destructive treatment than be the one who was unkind and destructive. To be on the receiving end is just a passing experience, but those who harbor those destructive tendencies must live with or resist those urges each day. Their misdeeds are the basis for our compassion. It is our compassion that will disengage us from this brutal cycle. Now, I just want you to think about this a second. So you find out that there's been an affair. Either you found it out on your own or you were told about it. You can choose. Well, of course you can choose. You can choose the pain. Of course you're going to be in pain. But just think about how great this is. How much power you get back by getting to a point at some point of saying, I forgive you. I forgive you. That's okay. Just being able to say that and not look at it as taking the high road. I will talk about this high road constantly. There is no high road. It's a deceptive road. That's ego talking about the high road. Coming from a place of genuine compassion and forgiveness. That's where it's at. That gives you back your power because you get to advance your feelings in a positive way. And you get to show the other spouse what it's like to deal with pain and not put guilt on them. And to show in this human experience that you get, we're all human. And we all screw up. That's huge. In your evolution of life, that's unbelievable progress. And I want you to please focus on that. We all are in this life to evolve. And divorce is just an experience to allow us to do that. And so experiencing betrayal and coming out of it with compassion and empathy and forgiveness for your spouse, that does boatloads for your evolution. So let's get back to the book. She's giving an example now. Dave married Jennifer, a much younger woman. When their marriage dissolved, Dave remained consumed with guilt and the searing pain of failure until he found out Jennifer had been having an affair with her ex-boyfriend all along. During the divorce process, Jennifer had dental work performed by Dave's dentist. Soon thereafter, Jennifer and the dentist began a relationship. When Dave learned that Jennifer was sleeping with his dentist, I'm sorry, this is funny to me, his anger subsided. He began to believe that she could not be monogamous and that perhaps her hunger for validation by men might never be satisfied. Ultimately, it took a dentist to show Dave that Jennifer's infidelity wasn't personal, with the previous boyfriend and now with the dentist. Only when he began to let go of the idea that he was the one who was flawed were they able to begin working towards settling the case. Because isn't that what happens? So we find out about betrayal, and too often we just go to, oh my God, what did I do to cause this? I mean, really, don't we? Most of us do. Dave had realized that his struggles would soon be over, but hers might not be. As the judge of your own inner courtroom, weigh the karmic evidence. Does your spouse's crime determine your sentence? Throughout history, betrayal has been enough to bring down empires. It's the one action done by another that has been viewed as insurmountable. My courtroom offers me a front row seat at the unfolding of this most tragic of human events. As hard as it is to believe, I can tell you that even the intensity of this pain can be reduced. The longer you wait to attempt to reduce it, however, the more you risk defining yourself by that betrayal. You don't want to add yourself to the list of tragic historical figures. So again, before I end with her last paragraph, I just finished with a couple where he admittedly betrayed. He went over and above the call of financial duty and spent way more money on spousal support and child support than he was required to do out of the guilt. She still couldn't forgive. She still browbeat and browbeat and browbeat. She had her own issues to deal with, her own personal issues, which affected the prism through which she looked at him. But as she started dealing with her own personal issues, she started putting her life back together. Her business improved. She looked better. Now, the last time I saw her, she was still, in the last email, she was still blaming, but the blame was less and less. And the less she blamed, the better her life became. And it's just the way it is. Last paragraph. It's not necessary that you forgive or even understand why betrayal happened. It's only necessary that you save yourself by unhooking from the blame. If you can do this when you've been betrayed, the rest of your lessons should come more easily, as should the rest of your life. This is something that Michelle says, that I say, and that any really good person in family law will try and reinforce. And definitely a good therapist. Once you unhook from the blame, you free yourself to feel less pain and to move yourself in a positive direction. So I thank all of you for joining me for this episode, number 5, Betrayal. I'll be back with another episode. It's going to be on apology. This is Judy Weigel, your amicable divorce expert, a divorce mediator, and legal document assistant in Los Angeles. If you would like to communicate with me, you can email me, Judy, Judy, at divorceresourceinc.com. Judy, Judy, at divorceresourceinc.com. Thank you for joining me for yet another episode of Constructive Uncoupling.